Hey, Dr. Jon Finn here. Welcome to the Habit Mechanic podcast. Right now, you can get my new best-selling book, Train Your Brain for the AI Revolution, at tougherminds.co.uk. The digital book, audiobook, and physical book are all available at a special price that you won't find anywhere else. Hello, Habit Mechanics. I hope that you're well. It's Dr. Jon Finn here. Today, I'm going to share with you a podcast that I guested on recently. I was just really impressed by the host, who's called Sam Kleckly. His podcast is called Live Life in Motion. I just felt his questions were really excellent, and they certainly got me thinking, and I hope they'll get you thinking as well. You know, as we move from January into February, it's often a time where people can feel regret and disappointment about some of the failures that they think they've had so far in not delivering on their New Year's resolutions. They're not where they want to be. They didn't lose a little bit of weight. They haven't established that exercise habit. They haven't been going into the Habit Mechanic University app and posting their daily tea plans or their 3-to-1 reflections. But this is all part of becoming a habit mechanic and developing your habit mechanic intelligence. We can only get better by failing. Failing is our best teacher. But the key is to notice when we have failed and to proactively plan to do better. That's the key. So I think some of the insights that I share in the podcast I'm going to share with you very shortly will help you to reflect and hopefully give you that impetus to do even better in February and start to establish some really helpful habits. Before I share the podcast, I just want to say, remember, every day we're in the Habit Mechanic University app. We're posting our tea plans. We're posting our 3-to-1 reflections. So join the community. If you don't feel comfortable posting your tea plan, don't worry. Just see what other people are doing. But do like and comment on other people's contributions, because that really helps to support other people in their journey to becoming a habit mechanic. So hopefully see you in the app. But that's all for me for now. So hope you enjoy Sam's fantastic podcast.
Good afternoon to you, Dr. Jon. Morning here in the States. First off, man, how's your week going?
Good afternoon or good morning, Sam. Yeah, very good, thank you. Yeah, it's been a bit of a hectic start to January 2023. But yeah, productive, practicing what I preach. So with lots of focused, clever work this morning. And then more meeting focus this afternoon. Yeah, so it's all good.
Right now in your professional life, do you work more with companies or teams, individuals? Like, what does your daily structure look like working with the people you work with?
Yeah, so my main focus at the moment is I train people to become certified habit mechanic coaches.
Really
And
cool.
they could be independent business owners, they could be L&D people from global businesses, there could be senior managers in businesses, professional sports coaches. So that's where I'm at with my work. So I want to work with the people that can actually influence the culture of the organizations. But other members of my teams, they're working, all the way from education, working with pupils and teachers and parents on a daily basis, through to working in, big businesses, whether it's webinars, workshops, leadership development training. So we work across all those contexts, but what we're really interested in is helping people to actually change their behavior, what they think and what they do.
Mm-hmm.
We all know what we'd like to do differently, but doing it is a different story. So actually, we want to help people to actually build long-lasting, sustainable change, whether that's to help people to manage stress better, to be more productive, to be higher impact, higher performing leaders so they can develop great teams and great cultures. And that's why I think it's really important to give people that in-depth training where we certify people to become habit mechanic coaches so that they can use our toolkit in their day-to-day to help themselves, but also to help those people that they're trying to help, but also to be far more strategic in how they deploy our services across an organization so that we don't just turn up and do a random workshop and people go, that was really great, it's really interesting, but then they never do anything about
Yeah.
it. So that's why we wrote the book, in fact, so that, and have the app, so that it's easier for organizations and teams to plug in what we understand into their day to day. And that's why the book is like a manual, for example. It's not one of these books which has got one idea repeated 10 times. It's a manual for life, and it's something that I pick up and I use every day.
Yeah, and that's so important because so many people can listen to a podcast or have somebody speak to their organization and they tell you what things you could do to do better. And then the conversation is over, the podcast is over, and then they just never do it. They never put them in play in their daily life. And I was with a client this morning and I told them you're coming on, and she was talking about how she needs to fix some of her habits, how she needs to fix some of her morning routines. She's super busy with all these kids and stuff. And so we started talking about habits in general and how important, or first off, how we all have them. We don't always know if they're destructive or not. And we don't know how they are playing out throughout our day and affecting other things we are trying to do in our daily lives, whether it be personal or professional. And what you teach and what you do is so important for everybody to understand. And the mechanic book, I'm interested the origin story. Like what was going on in your life that where you started Tougher Minds and then started to write the book? Like what led you through that process?
Yeah, well, looking back on it now, this would be my understanding, and I'll go back to the origin after that. So here's how we understand it now, is that whether it's you or your team or your business, it's run by brains. You're run by your brain. Your team is run by brains. Your organization is run by brains, which we don't normally think of it like that. And what we now know is that brains are run by habits. So we've often thought of habits as like a bit of a sideshow. Oh, they're over there somewhere. It's 40 or 50% of what we do. That's partly because pop psychology has done a really bad job of helping us to understand what habits actually are and what they're not. So, and all a habit is, it's an automatic or semi-automatic behavior. And when I say behavior, I just mean everything that we think and do. So most of what we think and do is automatic, and we think at least 98% of what I'm thinking and doing right now, and what you're thinking and doing, Sam, and what who are listening are thinking and doing is automatic or semi-automatic. And if you look at someone like Daniel Kahneman's work, that's what he's talking about. And the challenge we face is that we're run by brains, our teams are run by brains, our organizations are run by brains. Most of what brains are doing is automatic, they're habits. In the world that we live in, it's harder than ever before to build and sustain habits that are helping us to be at our best. So habits that help us to manage stress better, to manage our confidence, to build, to sleep well, to eat well, to exercise properly, to be productive, to manage pressure well, to be a great leader, to be a great team member. It's harder than ever to build habits that allow us to do those things. And most of the things that we use to help us to be at our best were not built or designed with the brain in mind, because we've only in recent history really understood how human brains work. We've only been able to look inside the human brain for 25 years or so. So most of what we're doing is automatic. And so if we go back to the origin of Tougher Minds, where does Tougher Minds come from, that word? We know that a lot of our behavior is about surviving. A lot of the things that we automatically think and do is about survival, about helping us to stay alive, and also about helping us to manage how we're perceived by important people in our lives, because being liked by other people is really important for Homo sapiens, because we're not the biggest or fastest or strongest animal on the planet. We've prospered so well because we work really well in teams, and we need other people in our lives to like us if we're going to prosper. So we spend an awful lot of our time, and most of this 98% automatic behavior is silently, invisibly focused on survival. So when we went into the pandemic, into the lockdown, you noticed how quickly the supermarket shelves emptied because everybody panicked about getting enough food into the house, right? Because for most of our existence, food has been a scarce resource. So we've had to be really careful about making sure we've got enough of it. We're hunter-gatherers. We haven't always had supermarkets, on every corner. So
Hmm.
our instinctive brain is still worries when there's a scarcity of food. We see the panic. Also, many of us today are spending far too much time worrying about what other people think about us,
Man, so good.
worrying and beating ourselves up. And social media has really intensified that. So these are instinctive behaviors. So we can spend too much time doing those types of things. So where does tougher minds come from? It just means we've got to be a bit tougher on ourselves and recognize in a really nice way, recognize that we are doing these things in the first instance, and doing them too much and too often is not helpful for us being healthy, happy, and at our best. But because thinking in those ways is really automatic, it's largely invisible to us. We don't notice ourselves. But some people don't even notice they're speaking to themselves. And we're speaking to ourselves all the time. And a little exercise to try if you don't think you're speaking to yourself right now is to recognize that you've just said, I'm not speaking to myself. It's there all the time. So we are thinking all the time. And most of that thought process is habit, it's automatic. So habits run our lives, and it's harder than ever to build good habits. So the first thing we need to do is be aware of that,
Hmm.
be a bit tougher on ourselves and say, wait a minute, that's not helping me. And I think, the post-pandemic world is what we're seeing now is that many of us, and probably all of us, have silently, invisibly developed lots more unhelpful habits.
Hmm.
I hear people report that they're not, because of the hybrid work piece, they're not leaving the house, not in a day, in a week. Some people,
Hmm.
I haven't left the house this week.
Yeah.
What? We're designed to walk 12 miles a day. It doesn't mean we have to do that, but that's what we're designed to do.
Dang.
It's a fundamental part of how we operate. So, yeah, so tougher minds, that's where the word comes from. And really, my background's professional was sports psychology. That's how I started. So I started by working in the elite levels of professional sport in what we call football in the UK, but soccer in the US,
Hmm.
rugby league and rugby union. I worked in cricket, professional golf. So I was working in those sports, helping the coaches and helping the athletes. Um, I got really interested in why some young people, so some people, maybe they're 18, 19, that we'd sign. This is in professional football in particular. We'd sign some of these young people for maybe £100,000 from a Premier League club, really good young footballers, but they weren't good enough they weren't better than, David Beckham or Wayne Rooney or Steven Gerrard. So they weren't getting in the match day squad. So they come on loan to us for a bit. If we liked them, we'd sign them. Some of these players then a few years later we'd sell on for millions of pounds. One player in particular we bought from one club for £100,000 and we sold him back to that same club 2 years later for 3.5 million. He was their product. And there were similar stories to that for other players, but there were some other players in our club and other clubs that I saw who were being, they were really well thought of when they were 18, 19, but a few
Hmm.
years later, nobody would even pay them a professional wage anymore.
Yeah.
And it wasn't to do with their technical ability. For me, it was to do with their ability to turn up every day and push themselves and be tougher on themselves, if you like, and also to be able to perform under pressure. So I did a
Hmm.
PhD to explore more about that. That work took me into education. And then parents saw what we did in education and they took us into their businesses. So there's a full version of the story of the tougher minds in the book, but that's a short version.
I think you referenced like athletes, and me and my friend group, we've talked about that a lot. Is like, man, do you remember, X, Y, and Z, John Doe? He had so much talent. Only if he would have gotten his, daily activities in order, he could have been, star wide receiver or star, forward on the soccer team, whatever it might be. But it's crazy to think they have all the talent in the world, but they don't have their habits in order to let them excel at whatever it might be. What I think is so interesting, and it's so hard for people to do, is to recognize the destructive habits. Do you have tools or an exercise people can do to go through their habits and kind of realize what destructive habits they might have?
Yes, and in a way, this is the part of the journey of becoming a habit mechanic. It's uncovering those destructive habits. Yeah, our starting point is we have two habit analysis tools that are both in the book, and the book has over 30 tools in it,
Mm-hmm.
all designed to help you to be more aware of your habits and build new ones in different areas. But the first tool is called in-depth habits reflection. And in fact, I have the book here, so let me read you. We can't go through the entire thing, but let me read you one of those questions so you can try at least a little bit of it as you're listening. So this is in chapter 17. Let me find it. So this is the in-depth habits reflection. You'll be able to do this in the app very soon, actually.
Cool.
The Habit Mechanic University app. And actually in the Habit Mechanic University app right now, you can listen to the audiobook for free. So you could listen to this in chapter 17.
Awesome.
But the first question is, I give in to temptation and act impulsively. Now, if you never think you give in to temptation and act impulsively, you give yourself a 1. If you always think you give in to temptation and act impulsively, you give yourself a 10. Now, you're probably somewhere in between.
Mm-hmm.
Another question is, I have no discipline to keep going when things get difficult. Again, you give yourself a score 1 to 10. Another question would be, I beat myself up when I've messed up. If I never do that, I give myself a 1. If I always do that, I give myself a 10.
Mm-hmm.
So these are questions. The challenge that we have as human beings is that we're on a Zoom call now, so we can see each other very clearly, even though you're at the other side of the world.
Yeah.
I can see you in so much detail. Unfortunately, I can't see my internal thinking process anywhere near as clearly as I can see you. So I don't have this. I've got 20/20 vision almost when I'm looking at you, but not when I'm thinking about myself. Now, for physical things in our lives, it's much easier to get 20/20 vision. So what I mean by that is you can stand on a weighing scale. You don't just have to think, oh, I'm a bit overweight or I'm a bit underweight or I'm a lot overweight or a lot of underweight. You can step on a scale and get an accurate measurement. You don't have to think, oh, I think I did loads of exercise today, I didn't do any. You can actually now see on your phone or on your watch how many calories you burnt or how much distance that you did. But when it comes to, and that's why I call intelligent self-watching, when it comes to thinking about our own behaviors, and when I say behavior, I just mean everything that you think and you do is far more difficult. So these tools, and the first step to becoming a habit mechanic is to develop to do more intelligent self-watching. So this type of tool, it's like stepping on a weighing scale for your behavior. So this in-depth reflection warms you up, and you'll come to some conclusions about the main problems you've got.
Mm-hmm.
The second, so then we want to help you to start discovering your super habits and your destructive habits. We then have a second self-assessment, which is called the helpful habits reflection. This works a bit differently, but let me give you an example. So this is about 16, 17 questions. The first question is, I reflect on my diet, exercise and sleep and plan to make daily improvements in these areas. Now, if I already do this, or if that's not a priority, I give myself an A. If I already do it well, I give myself a B. If I need to do this better, I'll give myself a C. So you work through the self-assessment here. So another question would be, it would be helpful to recognize when I am stressed and successfully plan to reduce my stress.
Mm-hmm.
Or it would be helpful to successfully plan to improve my productivity levels. So essentially work through that exercise, and whichever questions you answer C to, I need to do this better, you can then start to prioritize which area to focus on. So by doing that, you're going to get a better sense of some of the things that you're doing that are destructive for your day-to-day. And a destructive habit is just a habit that's has a disproportionate negative impact on your life.
Mm-hmm. And do you have an example of a destructive habit and how it can affect your day?
Yes. So for example, I finish work too late. Therefore, I'm really hungry and I eat too much. And because I eat too much, I don't sleep very well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't sleep very well, I wake up the next day and I'm a bit groggy and I'm not really with it. So I'm procrastinate a bit more and I end up finishing work late again because I'm not very productive in the day. and then I start to gain weight, and I don't feel very good about myself. So you can see that one thing, finishing work too late, is having this negative knock-on effect for all these other behaviors. The other end of the continuum is super habits, and I list all my super habits in the book where they are right now, because I'm still learning. As I develop my habit mechanic intelligence, I'm still learning about this. But one of my super habits is every workday morning I go for a run. First thing I do every morning, I go for a run. That means that when I sit at my desk, I'm able to, plan for the day properly, to focus, to finish the day feeling good about myself, to finish work on time, to sleep better, to eat. It's easier to eat well. So it has all these positive impacts. And this is the idea of becoming a habit mechanic, is that we're all on this journey through our lives. Sometimes things are going great. We're climbing the mountain, we're making progress, we're feeling good about ourselves. Sometimes it feels like we're just almost falling off a sheer cliff face drop, or we just start progressively, developing worse and worse behaviors. What habit mechanics are able to do is it's easier for us to make progress up the mountain. When we think we're at the top, it's easier to assess whether that's real or not, whether we need to keep going or whether we need to just take our foot off the gas a little bit. When we fall down the other side, which we are all going to do because we can only learn by failing, we're able to stop ourselves falling as far or as fast and get back on track faster. Mm-hmm. So becoming a habit mechanic, it's a journey. It's like doing a PhD on yourself. And all the while we are developing our habit mechanic intelligence, the intelligence about ourselves and our habits, and about how to build more and more super habits and get rid of the destructive habits. And then once we've done that, we can become a chief habit mechanic, which is part of becoming a certified habit mechanic coach. So we can learn how to help others to do that, using all those tools that we've been using to help ourselves.
What you mentioned too was like, I've never thought about it in the way of how like I can look at you, you can look at me, and we kind of read each other, but it's very hard to read yourself, like how you are doing mentally and how your thoughts are processing. And I like to tell people like, you just got to look at yourself in the mirror and like be real with yourself, but that's very hard to do. And a lot of times when people do that, they don't know what they're looking for anyways. And your example there is actually exactly the one I was talking with my client this morning. It was like, if you don't do the exercise, you're not going to have a clear mind to complete your day. Therefore, your tasks are going to take a little bit longer. Therefore, you're going to end your workday a little bit later. And then you're going to throw off your dinner. You're going to throw off your sleep. And then that just snowballs into more bad habits that are going to destruct your day and really put you in a bad spot with things you're trying to accomplish. And you mentioned you go on a run every morning. That takes really incredible amount of discipline. What is your thought process around the discipline to get the run in?
So here's the thing. It doesn't, because it's a habit now. And this is what we're trying to do. So we've been led to believe that discipline and willpower is what we need to rely on all the time to do difficult things. But actually, and then we've also, some people say, well, willpower is useless, it's a waste of time. It isn't. We just got to understand what it is. So willpower is a limited resource. And what we need to do is use willpower to activate what we call the 9 action factors. And this is all in the book. So there are 9 factors that are driving everything that we do every minute of the day, everything that we think and we do. These 9 factors, they're driving every behavior in your team, in your organization, but they're invisible. And we're not aware of most of them. Mm-hmm. When we are aware of them, and that means often they're working against us, not for us. When we know what they are, we can get them working for us. And we do that on an individual level by creating what we call habit building plans, all in the book, where you can use those insights to help you to activate those different factors. We can help senior leaders to use those insights to build culture plans, mm-hmm. so they can act them across the organization. So what I've done over the years is I've used my willpower to activate those 9 action factors, so that now we know something's a habit when it's easier to do it than not do it. Mm-hmm. So it isn't like completely mindlessly get out of bed and before I know it, I'm running, and then before I know it, I'm back and I'm showered. It just means that it's easier for me to go for the run than not go for the run. Because if I don't go for the run now, I regret it.
Hmm.
I beat myself up because I know that for every minute of work I'm doing, it's probably at least 50% less effective than if I'd have invested the 25 minutes or 20 minutes to go for the run. So I've used my willpower to plan and to, in the first instance, to push myself to do it. And actually, I've started to I've just reactivated a simple core um, set of habits in the morning as well. So I let those slide maybe towards the back end of the last year when I was really tired. But now I'm just
Sure.
finding myself quite automatically doing my 50 press ups, my 50
Nice.
sit ups, my 25 pull ups, you know, and it seems to be really easy to do. So I've re-established the habit.
Hmm.
So it's about using the willpower as the conduit for building these better behaviors. And that's why traditional training is dead. It's why traditional coaching is dead. They don't work anymore because knowing what we need to do isn't enough. It's less and less impactful. I've just written an article for Forbes about this.
Yeah.
It We have to use the behavioral science because the first principle thinking here is that brains run what we do, habits run brains. It's harder than ever before to sustain helpful habits. And all the traditional approaches we've been using to help ourselves to be at our best, or to the performance management systems we use in organizations, they're not designed with the brain in mind. And it's like those young athletes you're talking about. Somebody might have done some imagery training with them or some self-talk training or show them how to set goals. Nobody trained them how to become a habit mechanic. And that's where the magic is. And the first sports franchise that actually starts training their young athletes to become habit mechanics is going to set the seeds to become the world beaters, because this is where the action is. If we can teach those young people and even our senior people how their brains work, not by doing functional MRI scans with them, but actually how to help them to build better habits every day, that's going to be the magic we need to build better sustainable performance, in our organizations, both on the field and off the field.
When you speak about the traditional coaching, it right away I thought about just like a coach yelling at a team to like push harder and go stronger, and like, in the traditional coaching model, how have you seen traditional coaches start to realize they need to change their way they're coaching, or does it take somebody like you to come in and step in and really coach them so they know why these new techniques or new things will help their team?
Yeah, and this isn't just sports coaches. We're talking about life coaches and
Mm-hmm.
business coaches. But yeah, I don't see this in the literature. So for me, we saw what sports science did. There was a sports science revolution about 20 years ago, and that's when I first started to work in professional sport, where we took the science from physiology and nutrition, etc., and we plugged that into what athletes were doing every day to supercharge their fitness and their conditioning levels. And now it's night and day, in comparison. We've seen this radical improvements in what athletes are able to do physically on the field. For me, what I would call habit science is at the minute untapped in any kind of purposeful way. Coaches are not getting taught this. Some coaches know how to do it through experience a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't know the 9 action factors and they don't know how to manipulate them to really supercharge them. The first group of coaches that do that, whether it's the life coaches, the business coaches, the sports coaches, are going to be able to take their teams and their organizations to an entire new level. And that's the work that I'm currently doing by training people to become certified habit mechanic
Yeah.
coaches. Because if you look at the literature, it doesn't exist. So
Mm-hmm.
these ideas are not in the training systems. So why would the coaches know it?
Yeah, it's very interesting and powerful stuff. Is there? I mean, you've worked with same, the best of the best, some of the most high performing individuals and athletes in both sport and business. Is there habits you see these people still struggle with that they do change? And do these high performing people, do they continue to work on their habits?
I think all the best people are working on themselves all the time.
Hmm.
That's very clear. But I think the challenge then is that when I become a coach, how do I get other people to do that? How do I get others to do it as well? And in very simple language, the carrot and the stick systems that we might have been able to use 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, don't work anymore.
Hmm.
So the more I can understand, it's like, having mechanic is deliberate. It's like if the car mechanic doesn't understand the first principle mechanisms of how engines work, they won't be able to fix it. It doesn't matter whether it's a new engine or an old engine. The fundamental principles are the same of how engines work. As coaches, as leaders, no one taught us the first principles of how human beings work, of why we do what we do, because we didn't really understand that. There's a story in the book, just to put this into context, one of the first stories about Roger Bannister. Roger Bannister was the first person to run the sub 4 minute mile. He did it in the 1940s. When Roger Bannister was training to do that, he was actually he was training to be a medical doctor at Oxford University in the UK. And not only that, he was actually a research scholar at Oxford University as well. And his research was interested in the role of oxygen in distance running. So he had people in the laboratories on treadmills, in using technologies that are familiar to us today, on a treadmill, measuring oxygen input, carbon dioxide output. He was doing that in the 1940s, and he was using that research then to inform how he trained, because he understood he had to get better at conserving oxygen. So he changed his running style, he changed his training habits, all informed by that research. And we've seen how that type of science is being used, especially over the last 20 years, to really supercharge how we physically condition ourselves. But when we come to the human behavior side of things, how we think, our psychology, we've only been able to look inside the human brain for about 25 years or so. Never mind make sense of what we've seen in there. So in the 1940s, Roger Bannister was able to look inside the human body almost physiologically like, we can today. And that's why, physiology, the physiological sciences are about 70 years ahead of where the psychological sciences are. Most of the established psychological frameworks that we use are from about 100 years ago. And then maybe some of the more recent ones are maybe from the 60s. They will not designed with any sophisticated understanding of how brains actually work. If you spoke to the top neuroscientists in the world 25 years ago, they were fairly compelled that when we stop physically growing, our brains stop changing in any substantial way. And of course, one of the major findings that's come out of functional MRI scanners is neuroplasticity. Brains are changing all the time.
Yeah.
So you got written off. If you stopped physically growing when you were 16, that was it. You got what you've got now, kid. You're either good at this or you're not good at it, and that's your lot. Now we know that brains are not fully matured if we're med until we're 25 years old. And the cleverest part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, is the last part of the brain to wire. For females, about a year ahead. So what we've understood about from neuroscience is really changed a lot of what we thought about why humans do what they do and their fundamental basic abilities. And I think that the habit mechanic and the tougher minds approach is the first approach to pull all that together in a really user-friendly, practical way, whether you're an individual who wants to be at your best more often or you're a leader who wants to actually help yourself to be able to influence and create great cultures at a team level or an organizational level. So we're just at the start of the journey of applying these insights into our day-to-day. And it's taken me I've got 3 degrees, 3 psychology-related degrees, including a PhD. And I'd say the Habit Mechanic book easily took me over 20 years to write.
How different are superpower or super habits from individual to individual? Or are there a few things that we can all do or try to make habits in our life to perform better in whatever way?
Yeah. Well, everyone is unique and nothing that we ever teach is prescriptive. So we say, here's the toolkit. Here are some ways to analyze yourself. Go try and test some tools. Here's how to create a habit building plan. go try these out, and you're going to learn what works best for you. But I think, yeah, in my experience, I mean, let's just start with some real basic stuff. If your brain isn't working well, you're not going to be able to do anything well in your life. And brains don't work well if you're not sleeping properly,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not eating properly, if you're not exercising properly. You know, often we think about diet for fat and for body image. The first thing you need to think about your diet for is to get your brain working well. So are you getting enough fatty acids into your brain? And typically in our Western diets, we lack omega-3 fatty acids. Are you getting enough complex carbohydrates into the system? Because that's the main fuel for your brain. Are you putting enough antioxidants into your body? Because they allow your brain to clear out things. And when we think about sleep, we think about length. Did I get my 8 hours? It's not about 8 hours or 10 hours or 5 hours. It's about quality sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting into non-REM cycles. Are you accumulating enough exercise every day? When we move around, we release a protein in our brain called BDNF, which is like miracle growth for our brain. It's like manure for your brain cells. They allow your brain to grow new neurobiological connections. Because if we look at our grandparents' generation, just because of the way they lived their life, they were getting about an hour's extra quality sleep per night compared to what we get.
Wow.
If we go back to London 100 years ago, and probably any major city in the Western world, people on average were walking 10 miles a day. So our sort of daily sleep and exercise habits have changed dramatically, and all of a sudden we got a pandemic where we were forced into lockdown. So even, you know, most people had pretty poor sleep and exercise habits
Oh yeah.
3 years ago compared to what they used to look like 100 years ago, and they've dramatically got worse in the last 3 or 2 years. Can't remember how long ago the pandemic happened now, because it's been
Like 3 years ago now or something like that. Is there a little off topic, but I hear you say a lot about as humans, we are designed to walk 12 miles a day. Do you know, or has there been data out there about how the average human walks or moves per day?
Not 10 miles, well, not 12 miles. No,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I was saying. Is some people now are telling me that they're not leaving the house for a week,
Mm-hmm.
because at least before, people had to get out the door to go to work. You know, walking is included in exercise. It's the most basic exercise that we do.
Yeah, it's
They
great.
might walk around. We know that, you know, most people in the UK, for example, know and actually agree it's a good idea to walk 10,000 steps a day.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are not doing that.
No, and I think that's a great baseline too. 10,000 steps if you can get there. Is there a time frame? Because this is kind of back to like the willpower and the discipline. Is there a time frame of when you take an action, something that you're changing, and it actually becomes a habit? Is there something you say you need to do for 30 days or 60 days?
Until it becomes a habit, consolidated, absolutely no. I think we need to debunk the myth that you can build a better habit in 21 days.
Okay.
Because habits are really complex. I think, you know, some habits we're trying to build, like my core habit, I've already got a lot of wiring for that in my brain, so I can reestablish it much faster than 21 days, in fact. Other habits, like getting better at the way I speak to myself, maybe I've been practicing the way I speak to myself for the last 20 years. So unraveling that's going to take some time and some effort. What we know is that we get good at what we practice. Because when we practice something, we move. So we pay attention to something, we move it from our short-term memory. Our short-term memory can only hold something for about 30 seconds. So if you don't repeat the idea of habit mechanic intelligence in the next 30 seconds, and I've already repeated that a few times. So here's another concept. If you don't repeat the idea of the T plan, T stands for tiny, empowering action. So this is the chapter 1, 2, takes 2 minutes a day. You can, it saves me at least an hour per day. That's the main thing people post in the Habit Mechanic University app is their T plan. If you don't repeat the T acronym within 30 seconds, you're probably going to forget it, right? That's the way our short-term memory works.
Yeah.
And our short-term memory can only hold about 5 to 7 bits of information at a time, which I probably put into most people's short-term memories just then. So this is how learning happens. If you repeat the T plan, I'll do it for you now. Tiny, empowering action, tiny, empowering action, tiny, empowering action. You're starting to move it into your long-term memory, and physically in your brain, you're growing some new neurobiological connections for it. Tiny, empowering action,
Mm-hmm.
tiny, empowering action, and those connections start off like cobwebs. And the more you repeat tiny, empowering action, that's the T plan. The more you strengthen the connections. So that's how brains work. So we get good at what we practice, but equally, you could get really good at just knowing what tiny empowering action is.
Mm-hmm.
Then, if you don't do anything with it for 6 months,
Yeah.
the neurons die and they disappear. It's like when you were at elementary school or primary school, if you're in the UK, you knew everyone's name in your class, but now you don't because the neurons that you had for those names have died, they've disappeared, they've
Mm-hmm.
been pruned. So we are learning. So this idea that if you just practice something for 21 days, it's a habit doesn't make sense because if for the next 21 days you stop practicing it, it won't be a habit anymore. So the rule to apply is you get good at what you practice for better and for worse. So if you're practicing beating yourself up every day, you're getting better at that. If you're practicing, going for your morning run for the next 21 days, you're going to get better at that. Then if you don't practice it for 21 days, so our brain is changing all the time.
What are some of the most common destructive habits?
Beating myself up too much. I think finishing work late is a really good one. Drinking too much,
Mm-hmm.
alcohol is a toxin.
Yeah.
Just gonna have one glass of wine and then it's the bottle, and then I don't sleep very well. So doing these things that a lot of the destructive habits are things that we do to relieve short-term gratification, to make us feel good in the short term,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately they're destructive for us in the long term. Just staying up a little bit later to watch this next episode of the Chippendales, the drama on Disney, whatever you're watching at the moment, or the Crown on Netflix. But then you don't sleep. So because our brain is designed for short-term gratification,
Mm-hmm.
and it's easier than ever to do that. So they often link back to, and it might feel counterintuitive, but beating yourself up is about a short-term gratification idea because it's your brain making you aware of a potential threat or a problem,
Mm-hmm.
which we describe in our lighthouse brain model. So these negative things that we do, they have a survival function, which feels counterintuitive as to why we prioritize doing them.
Yeah. And that's like you talk about drinking or like people take medication or whatever. A lot of times that is a short-term feeling that they're chasing. Is there I've heard you speak a lot about social media, and I know that's newer, but how is social media impacting our habits and more specifically our destructive habits?
Yeah, well, if you practice using social media, then you're building a habit for that.
Mm-hmm.
So our ability there's only 24 hours in a day. That's all we've got. It's like a barcode. And instead of black and white lines, think of red and blue lines. The blue lines represent times in the day where we're doing and thinking things that are making it easier for us to be healthy, happy, and at our best. The red lines represent times in the day where we are thinking and doing things that make it more difficult for us to be healthy, happy, and at our best. Now, some of our time on social media might be a blue line. That might be a good habit. Some of our time on social media was probably a red line.
Mm-hmm.
So it's working out what's helpful for you and what's not helpful. So, people will be getting overly stressed because of what they're seeing and doing on social media, which then stops them sleeping properly. Some people's time on social media will mean that they're not as productive as they want to be, making progress on the challenging work we need to do every day to make us feel good about ourselves. So, it's idiosyncratic, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and I'm sure more people than ever before are spending more time on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you used to do with that time? What were you doing before? Because it didn't exist 15 years ago. So you weren't checking social media, you were doing something else.
Yeah. There's a lot of probably in the red line with social media. With your app, how is that app coming along, and what is your goals for the app?
Yeah, so we want to give people a space which is really safe to share what you're working on and what you're doing. So the Habit Mechanic University is a community, and you can go on there and see it now, where people just share their T plan, they share their reflections, and then the next bit that will become available is what's called your Habit Mechanic Toolkit, which is a daily dashboard, which is a dashboard where you can record your T plan, do what we call your 3-to-1 reflections at the end of the day, set your weekly goals, create your long-term goals, what we call the FAM form, and analyze your habits. It's got all our trainings in there, and most of the tools from the book are in there digitalized. So that it supercharges how you use the book. It's designed to be used in conjunction with the book. And then you can go in there with your team if you want and do it together and model the right behaviors.
Very cool.
So it's really a foundational tool to make it easier for people to build better habits. And it's trying to activate as many of the non-action factors as possible. So people really like it. You know, it's not a habit tracking app. I think they're just can be helpful for little things, but
Yeah, it's a community.
it's a community, and it gives you the tool. It makes it easier to put the things in the book into practice. But then because everything's also in the book, you don't have to be online all the time either. So, and also if I'm a certified habit mechanic coach, I can be on there with my clients or my team members, and I can be helping them to use the tool. So we want to make it as easy as our mission is to make it as easy as possible for people to use first principle thinking about how their brain works to build better habits so that they can be healthier, happier, and at their best more often.
Man, it's so important. Is there a person that you've worked with or an example that you think does it great?
Well, no one can use the Habit Mechanic University app yet as well as they will be able to do soon because it isn't all out there yet. I haven't worked with anyone who's got it nailed down yet because I don't think we've had the tools to help them to do that. But yeah, there are certainly, I mean, in the book, there are maybe 40, 50 case studies of people, you know, that you see and think, yeah, they've got it down, but I don't see anyone nailing it across. We've got a leadership model, which has 4 areas: the role model, the action communicator, the cultural architect, the swap coach. I haven't got one example that nails all those areas. I don't think any of those people, quite a few I know personally, would think that they've got them all nailed down either.
Yeah.
Because no one taught us to do it this way. So I think that, yeah, we can all improve in all these areas. So it's really exciting. The Habit Mechanic book is only about 9 months old now. It's only been in the public domain for 9 months. So it's new. The app isn't even fully realized yet. It will be, you know, we're in mid-January now. So by mid-Feb, there'll be all the powerful tools will be released.
Very cool.
But yeah, it might sound a bit arrogant to say that, but I don't think I've got all this nailed down myself yet. So
no, and I think that is exactly what I was kind of expecting in the answer, because the people that I look up to the most in business or in sport are constantly working on themselves, whether it be, you know, the Tom Brady or the Peyton Manning or the Lionel Messi or whoever it is. They're constantly trying to improve. And you know, if those individuals know that they can still have to work extremely hard on their daily habits, on their daily routines to continue to improve, then, you know, we can all improve. And that's one thing that I love about this. And it's not, you know, your habit might work for a year and then you might get a baby, or things are going to change. And so you're going to have to kind of readjust your habits and your daily routines to best suit you where you are in life at that time. Dr. Jon, where can people find your stuff? I'm going to have it listed all in the show notes, but where can they find your stuff? Where can they find you so if they want to work with you, they can?
yeah, so you can go to our website, which is tougherminds.co.uk. So we talked about tougher minds in the show, so hopefully my accent is coming through there. So loads of free resources on there. You can sign up for the app on there. You can access our podcast. We've got the Habit Mechanic podcast and also loads of media articles and third-party podcasts that we've been on. The book is available in all major, you know, online bookstores, including Amazon. So you can get the Habit Mechanic University book there. It's like a manual for life. It's got over 30 tools in it. It took me over 20 years to write. The feedback's fantastic. People are already reporting that it's changing their life.
Dang.
Someone told me the other day that they used it to help them to learn how to walk again after they had a massive spine operation. They got told they'd never walk again. So that's just all
Wow.
these
You
interesting
wouldn't
stories
think
are coming
that.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really, really great because that's why we put the book. The book is like a philanthropic exercise because everything, it's all the core things that we teach people in book format. So you can get that there. So you also see it on you can link to it from the website. I'm most active on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, connect with me. Say you've heard me on the podcast, and we'll connect. So yeah, they're the main channels that we operate in.
Perfect. And I'll have those definitely all listed in the show notes. And I have my company leadership summit coming up end of next week. And we always have a couple of books we need to suggest for the team. So I'm going to make sure to have, I think the Habit Mechanic could be the number one thing that we all need to work on. We've been trying to build more team leadership and people doing the right things on a daily basis to be productive for the company and the industry. But I just want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for joining me for almost 50 minutes. I mean, I know you're probably crazy busy, but I do believe in what you're doing is so incredibly important for people to understand, and we all do it, and we can all improve something we can all take something from. So thank you for coming on. It's really been a pleasure to have you.
No, thank you, Sam. And I'll just say, because you mentioned it in the book as well, in the step 4, are all the leadership tools. We've got the team power model, which is a 5-stage leadership model. You can assess yourself on that as a team. We've got 4, the different areas of our leadership model I talked about. We've got like the self-assessment tool I started to talk through. We have that for each area. So we break leadership down into about 130 different habits. You just pick one to work on. So that's all in there. So if everyone has a copy of the book in that meeting, for example, you can be
Yeah,
working on it in the meeting together collectively. So yeah, no, thank you, Sam. And if anyone has any questions, just get in touch, and I'll try to answer best I can. But hopefully, see you in the app. Let me know what you think about the book,
definitely.
and hopefully, it's been helpful.
It has. Thank you so much again, man. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Well, I hope you found that as interesting as I did. The reality is that we get good at what we practice, and the more we practice something, the more wires in our brain we grow for that thing. So I know that it can sometimes feel like there's no way we can do things differently, but I guarantee you absolutely can. And the way to do that is to start to become a habit mechanic if you're not already. And there's no magic to it. It's just about reflecting and planning using the Habit Mechanic tools, which you can find in the Habit Mechanic book and also in the Habit Mechanic University app. And you never know which habit is around the corner, which habit you're going to uncover. And I genuinely believe, and I experienced this myself, that we are only ever one habit away from being that healthier, happier, higher performing version of ourselves that would be so meaningful to us and make us feel much better about ourselves. So remember, you're only ever one habit away. Thanks for listening to the Habit Mechanic podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe and tell someone else about one of the ideas or insights that you found most interesting.